So as 2024 comes to a close, let's have some fun and pick a form England team. If you were to pick just on the first half of the Premiership, that's been my main domestic goal, to watch every single minute of the English Premiership and report on it. Going okay so far. It's quite an effort, but it's good fun and it lets me do stuff like this. At least I feel as informed as possible to make my bad decisions, and you guys can tell me which ones I've made wrong. That's always fun, so get involved in the comments. And yeah, in the new year, sometimes people like to do new things, and I've mentioned a few times, if you want to get a little bit more off a testosterone testing kit, this one from Manual, they've sent me, and they've said you can have a bit more than our introductory offer. I think it was 38% off normally for everyone anyway. They've given us a bit more. RugbyAnalyst 45 gives you 45% off. I met up with a friend and he was telling me about he'd done it with my code and he was really into his health and that sort of thing. So if you want to do that in the new year, do get involved. Use that code or the link in the description. Just go straight through. But I thought I'd get that one out of the way there. Okay, let's have a look at loose head prop. Now there are some decent options here. It's starting to look a little bit more rosy in the prop department. Although Finn Baxter, has he dropped off? Or was he never quite as good as we thought? Certainly I thought. I definitely jumped on the bandwagon, and I do that because when England are desperate for certain positions, I really try and latch on to certain youngsters to see if they're good enough. And it looked like Finn Baxter was a real deal in the summer against New Zealand, as I've been going on about, but just doesn't look like he's out the races compared to his contemporaries in the Premiership. So if he's not the best in the Premiership, then I don't think he should be picked anyway. And yeah, this is a form team, and these lists are kind of everyone I'm considering. I've got a big load of lists. These are the guys I'm considering, not all the form guys, just everyone. We've seen Yogan be pretty decent for Northampton. Barno's just come back. He's very strong. Rod's doing okay. But I think the two standouts for me on form are Asher Apoko-Fajor, who looks like he's ready. He's very young, but he's definitely bulking up. He's really strong. I think he's going to be potentially world class. I'm going to say that now. Playing on both sides, I'm putting him here as a loose head, as I think that's where he's playing mainly at the moment for Sale. Good to have a bit of continuity. So I think he's my starter, and the guy on the bench is actually Ellis Genge, who I think is having a really good season for Bristol. Is it going to translate into dominating internationals? I don't know, but I like his explosiveness off the bench. He is actually a little bit more explosive than Apoko-Fajor, I think, around the park, although I think Apoko-Fajor will become a better player. But yeah, kind of quite hopeful for those two. They're my two form guys there. Loose head. Now hooker, I think actually all these guys on this list are playing well, which is great. Theo Dan's come back with a real bang. I say come back, he kind of flips in and out with Jamie George. They rotate. He's trying to make a statement to say he is the real deal. And who do I think is the most consistent? Well, Cowan Dickey's pretty consistent. George is pretty consistent. So is Langdon. So I could pick any of these guys. But O'Gray's been great all season for Bristol. I mean, yes, they lost the last game, but he's had so many good games under his belt. And, just to mention that teams who are playing poorly, it does make them hard to stand out, players hard to stand out. So that is going to affect it a bit, I guess. But I think O'Gray actually on consistency is my starter. On form, and Dan I think is coming into a real run of form as well. So two explosive guys, but you could go with any of those, to be honest. Then tight head prop. This is the list I'm working with at the moment. Trevor Davison got a brace of tries, but of course against Newcastle they were just all over them, and he could be okay. He could be one for here and now. The one for the future there is definitely Afolabi Fazagbon. He looks really strong. Doesn't always get it right, but I love his attitude. He's got that big height as well, 6'4". He's going to get better and better. And I think he's in decent form. Doesn't always start. But I think Joe Hayes is the man, actually. He's the guy that's really impressed me, the Leicester tight head. Now, he's come out in interviews and said he's really put his head down and worked hard. Physically, he's in the best shape of his life. He's an absolute brick of a scrummager. He's not as good around the park as the rest, but he's doing the nuts and bolts really well, what you want from a tight head. So I think he's the form man. Will Stewart's putting in good performances for Bath, but again, because he's not the best tight head at his club, that is Thomas Latoy, struggles a little bit to shine, I guess. So I'd go Hayes and go with the use of Fazagbon there. I think those are the two guys that have impressed me the most. Let's have a look at the second row list, and it's not massive, I don't think. These are all the guys I'm considering. Some guys have maybe dropped off in form. Rusi Tuima hasn't really become that enforcer I thought he might. He's big and a bit lumpy, a bit slow. I'm not too sure. We'll see if he'll kick on at some point, but not for me. The two Bristol lads are really interesting. Joe Batley and then Joe Owen, the younger one, has been coming into it recently. He's one to watch, although on the form list, I think Batley could be close. Other guys there, obviously Chesham we haven't seen, he's on the list. He started the season actually really well, and he was looking great, and that injury came at just the worst time. I think the two form guys for me actually are Maro Itoje, and I'm going to get some backlash for that, I'm sure, but I think he's playing as well as he has for ages. He's not as exciting as he used to be. He's not making those big breaks, but I think he's playing really solidly, really well. Good skills, good technique, in there with the muscular fight. George Martin, who would be his starter probably in the Six Nations, I'm putting him on the bench. He's been okay. He runs head down really hard, does the hard yard, sometimes gets stopped, but I need to see a bit more from him, I think. But Alex Coles has really impressed me, particularly recently in the last game. Absolutely all over the place. He's the guy who actually can make the breaks and the offloads. So I think I'd go Coles and Itoje with Martin on the bench. Now take a breath. Here is the massive back row list. I'm not going to talk about absolutely everyone. Let's talk about Barbary, the first guy on the list. He's come back from a bit of a concussion break and he's looked really strong. He really is a carrier. That's his thing. If you stop him, that's his game gone. But goodness me, he takes a lot to stop. And sometimes with someone that big, it does take it out of the tackler or tacklers. So, he's the type of player you might want to go for if you're into that sort of play. If not, you probably leave him, to be honest. Cunningham South has good impact. Still not 100% sure in his consistency. But one guy who has been very consistent, who's straight in as a start, is Ben Curry. Goodness me, his best season by miles, captain of Sale. Guy, he's so quick, he's so strong, he gets over the ball great. He is an out-and-out 7, and I'm not quite sure what Tom Curry is. Is he a 7? Is he an 8 or 6? I don't know. But Ben Curry consistently has to be in there. I was impressed with Cracknell recently for Leicester. Dombrandt always produces good performances. For Harlequins, they use his handling skills very well. Earl hasn't been the greatest, to be honest. One guy I think who has been really consistently good, though, is Ted Hill of Bath. I'm a massive fan. His last game I thought was fantastic. And he just absolutely obliterates defenders as well. And he's great in the line-out and his speed. So, yeah, I think he's been consistently good. He's my 6. And there's loads of other guys you could pick. Pepper's been very consistent. Pearson, his best season so far. And then who do you take as number 8? Well, the two outstanding number 8s for me are young Henry Pollock of Northampton. And again, who would have thought that Pollock would be the starting 8 for Northampton and consistently mixing it with the best in the Premiership, particularly his carrying. But I think he'd be good on the bench covering 7 and 8. But Tom Willis has been, I think, pretty epic for Saracens, actually. They really miss him when he's not there. Just big and muscular and nasty. So he's my 8. So Ted Hill, Ben Curry, Tom Willis as my form starting back row with Henry Pollock covering the bench. On to scrum half and a few options here. I had been favouring Porter, although I think he might have been dropping off a little bit as Harlequins do seem to be losing their way in attack, just trying to overplay everything and not threatening physically. Anyway, Alex Mitchell has come back with a bang and he's made a big difference in Northampton. Hasn't played obviously the full season. So actually I think the starter on form would be Ben Spencer because he's been consistently so good for Bath all the time. Is he the type of player you want starting from England? I don't know, but he's literally playing the best rugby of his life and consistently so, and a good leader. So I think Spencer starts on form with Alex Mitchell on the bench. Fly half, you could take all 4 really. Any of this combination I think is playing pretty well to their strengths. Marcus Smith, he's a breaking 10. He runs the ball. He counterattacks the best. In the face, it's Finn Smith or George Ford. But actually, I think consistently, who's been playing the best game all round is probably Fergus Burke of Saracens. And good discussion in the comments. If England don't cap him, maybe Scotland will and should. And Scotland are pretty good at grabbing players who are eligible and getting them capped, particularly off England. I think he's the form man, actually, although Saracens obviously had a very poor game in the last round, but I think that's a bit of a blip. So he starts, and Marcus Smith off the bench I think would be a great option, particularly that counter-attacking, and he can cover 15 as well. So those are the two there. Centres we know is a pretty light area, and I've been watching this really closely for England potential. I think Will Butt has, dropped off, doesn't play every match. I don't know if he's injured at the moment. Dingwall's consistent, but if you were to take one of the centres, if they were both available for England, you'd take Rory Hutchinson, who I think's got more of an X factor. Dingwall's solid. I've been watching Ollie Hartley. I haven't seen enough from him yet to say yes for England. Kelly, if you want some ball movements, been looking good for Leicester. Litchfield's actually gone a bit on the up, I think, for Northampton, consistently getting starts and minutes. Lazowski, I think, has gone down a little bit potentially for me. Beard, Freeman, Slade's been playing 10, so on form we wouldn't be picking him at 13 because Exeter are so desperate to get something going. They've gone to the old head of Slade. So the one guy I think's on really good form is Ollie Lawrence. Another strong game just before New Year. So powerful, so dangerous. And then 12, I'm probably going to take Luke Northmore, although you can argue with me on that one. I think he's been very consistent. He tries to hit the line hard. He's not the biggest, but he's got a good all-round game. Definitely a good physical threat with his pace as well. So those two there, but a bit of a light area. And then finally, a massive list for the back three. Starting off with Jack Bates of Bristol. Now, primarily he came to my attention for the under-20s. I think he was a 13 at the time, so clearly he can play outside centre as well. But I don't think he's in contention yet. Fewerbutu has got injured, although has been very good for a poor Exeter. He's the guy that tends to stand out, but still hard to really stand out when the team is not playing that well. I thought Tobias Elliott would kick on, but hasn't really actually. Furbank's injured. Hassel Collins has really good games and some poor games. Hodge the same. Hendy's shown flashes. Will Muir is very consistent, and maybe he should be in this form team. Roebuck, Slightholme have all been good. Let's just talk about Freddie Stewart for a bit. Form-wise, I think he's doing pretty well. He's certainly giving it absolutely everything. No, he's not leaving anything to chance. But we saw in the last game there against Harlequins at Twickenham, his strengths, his weaknesses, and twice he got isolated, in defence and got absolutely roasted. And I just don't think that's good enough for the top level, so I just can't pick him there. So actually the 15 I'm going to pick is Joe Carpenter of Sale. Sale guys don't get a lot of praise, to be honest. Me, myself, have kind of overlooked them at times, but I think this guy is the man at the moment for consistently good performances. In that last game there, when they nilled Bristol, he came flying across right at the end. Textbook cover tackle. That's what you want to see from your 15. A really good defender as well as an attacker. Yes, he's a little bit short, but on form, he's the 15. And the two flyers I'm going to pick, not Ollie Slightholme. He's been playing well, but I just think Caden Murley and Gabriel Ibitoy are just above him. Murley showed some amazing pace at Twickenham the other day, rounding Stewart for one of them. Gabriel Ibitoy has been consistently the best attacker in the Premiership. So there we go, Ibitoy, Murley and Joe Carpenter. And my final sub would be Tommy Freeman, who has been very consistent for Northampton. When he gets in the game, he gets involved, he's big, he's strong, he's got a good all-round game, could cover wing, fullback as well actually, and centre, so I think it'd be a really good sub. So that is my England 23 on form at the end of 2024. Still obviously half the Premiership to go. Let's see how they're looking at the end of that as we get towards Lions time, of course. But, not long as well to impress to get into that England squad. That's going to be, I think it's on the 14th of January is the announcement. So that I think there's another round of Premiership. Then you've got some games in Europe and that is it. So let me know what your squad would be on form in the description down below. If you want to get yourself a testosterone testing kit with 45% off, use that code RugbyAnalyst45 or the link in the description to get that applied. Anyway, thank you very much for your views throughout the whole of 2024. Much appreciated, and I'll catch you next time.